And welcome everybody to another episode of Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition in conjunction with our broadcast partners at Tri-X 57 right here at the Jersey Shore. We have another episode for you where we go away from New Jersey to talk about what's happening with coastal resiliency, or maybe the lack thereof. We'll find that out in just a minute here. But we are chatting here in mid-August. Dan, mid-August seems pretty good to me. I've been liking it. The water's been super warm. I mean, our guests from Florida won't think it's super warm, but it's been like in the mid to the upper 70s for like weeks.
It's all relative. Mid to upper 70s consistently in New Jersey is kind of like 90-degree water in Florida, right? I mean, it's
Right.
it's toasty for the Mid-Atlantic coast. We're enjoying that. It was a comfy start to August. Heat humidity building back now since it is still summer. And the clock is ticking to Labor Day, so it's a time of year where people really want to soak in that warm water, soak in the heat humidity, which can sometimes fade pretty quickly beyond Labor Day.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, at Atlantic City International Airport, we had the coldest start to August on record going back to 1944 through the 12th of the month. We went 12 straight days below average, and when you averaged all that out, it was the coldest start to the month. So that was actually pretty interesting. Palma, did you like this? I know you're a fall person. I'm assuming you liked the first couple of days of August here in New Jersey.
Well, I do enjoy like summer weather. I think, I do like the heat in the summer. And honestly, the water temp in the 70s is still way too cold for me. So maybe
I
I
think
should
we can all
visit
agree on
Florida to
right.
hop in the ocean. But no, I look forward to the fall, but I also really do enjoy the summer months too. So I'm trying to enjoy the last few weeks of summer and get out as much as possible.
All right, absolutely. And let's go to our friends here at the Land of Endless Summer. I love that license plate with the surfboard and the sun, and it says Endless Summer on there. We see a lot of them in New Jersey this time of the year, with all the snowbirds. But we have Alex Harris from the Miami Herald. She is back with us. She is now a recurring guest. And we have Ryan Ballogg from the Bradenton Herald. They worked together on a piece back in May about a Florida Senate Bill 180. That was signed. That would block communities from really rebuilding stronger after hurricanes. We're going to talk to him about what the rationale was for behind this and the impacts. But first, I have to ask the hard-hitting questions. Do you guys even go in the water when it's in the 70s in Florida? Or is you guys like, now I'll wait a couple of months till it warms up in like April or something?
Way too cold. Got to be at least 80. But it stays 80 through December and January. So the beach season lasts pretty far.
Yeah. Same thing in the Gulf, right, Ryan? It's even warmer in the Gulf. It's at times.
Yeah, I sadly I kind of avoid the beach. I was actually just up in Canada and I was swimming in some lakes up there, and I don't mind the cold water. It's very nice.
Okay. Well, maybe you and Palma can trade places, with the water temp. You can come back up to Jersey. We'll be in the 50s soon, and 40s and 30s soon enough. I like the eye roll there, Alex. All right, down to business here. So obviously, like we said, we have a bill that went through in Florida. Especially after all the hurricanes we saw last year, Milton, being one of them, of course. Just give us like the elevator pitch of your story that you can that everyone can read in Bradenton Herald or Miami Herald, and then we'll start asking some more in-depth questions. But what's like the top level summary of this?
Alex, you want to take that away?
Yeah, so SB 180 is a bill that has a lot of good stuff in it. It really streamlines recovery processes. It includes extra training for first responders and emergency managers in local communities. There's a lot of really good stuff that people were really excited about. The problem is there's a couple sentences in there that some local governments see as a poison pill. They basically say that if your county has been hit by a hurricane, or if it gets hit by a hurricane in the future, any sort of emergency is declared there, you are not allowed for 2 years afterwards to add any new rebuilding practices that would be considered burdensome or restrictive. And if a developer finds the new practices you've add are burdensome or restrictive, they can sue the county. So that is really creating a situation where local governments say is having unintended consequences, or perhaps intended, depends on who you ask, where local governments are unable to make even really basic changes, like the setback between a property and the wetlands, or impact fees, or a new stormwater plan to make drainage easier or better in some communities. They're getting rolled back because by the letter of this law, it's considered a big change in the years after a hurricane. So people are nervous that, especially with the recurring clause in here, which is that this bill re-ups every single time there's a hurricane, that communities in Florida that are constantly getting walloped, which is a lot of us a lot of the time, could be stuck in a permanent state of you can't improve your building code. And if you try, you're going to get sued.
There's a lot with that bill. And Palma, you know, being our building expert here in Margate, we were talking a little bit off camera, and she had some emotions, I guess, on this. Do you want to go, Palma, as far as, you know, what your thoughts are on this?
Yeah, I mean, I can see where it would be challenging because local codes, you know, there's different types, whether it's state regulations or city regulations, and then there's also international codes. So it's tough to see how a bill could kind of dictate how the whole state is going to develop. And I guess I would also wonder, like, does this affect like just private homeowners too, like redeveloping their own property, or is it more on like grand scale projects?
It's more of a grand scale thing. Think about the issue of like a community having a comprehensive development master plan, which says the houses here can be up to 3 stories. The houses here need to have a certain amount of setback before you hit the street, or you can have this many trees in your property, or you have to pass a law to cut them down. We're talking those kind of things. This law isn't going to impact homeowners' ability to rebuild. In fact, some of the things in this law could make it easier for individual property owners to rebuild after a storm, some of the streamlining and cutting of red bureaucratic tape that I mentioned earlier. So individual homeowners might see some changes they like when it comes to recovery from a storm, but local governments who are trying to make changes, not at the state level, not at the federal level, not at the international code level, but just we as a community have decided this area floods a lot. Maybe we want to ask people to hold more stormwater on their property, designed so they can hold more rain. That's the kind of stuff that we're hearing from local counties that this bill would block them from doing. I don't know, Ryan, if you have anything to add to that, of what you've already seen in Manatee County getting blocked by this.
Yeah, I would say one example, for instance, is we have, you know, we're a county of about 450,000 people right now. It's been growing extremely rapidly to the point where the infrastructure isn't necessarily keeping up with all the new development and growth. And the county wants to put back this basically development boundary where they say you can't do large scale development past this point out east because we don't have the infrastructure to support that yet. And they're being blocked by this bill because they're saying that's more burdensome or restrictive than what you already have on the books. So it's really affecting the future of how local governments are able to plan their communities.
Very, very interesting. What I want to do is I have a question, but I do want to take a break. So we're going to take a brief break. Then the other side, we'll get more into this with Alex Harris and Ryan Ballogg about what's going on in Florida and coastal resiliency. And we are back. We are continuing our conversation about the Senate Bill 180 that was signed into law in Florida over the summer relating to building back after hurricanes. This could be for either you, Ryan, or Alex here. So I don't know, is this the way to think about it? I mean, you said the bill, Alex, had a lot of good things in there, right, regarding to building back better. At the same time, is it from the state's perspective or from the Senate's perspective, some of those things that you just mentioned, is that from the standpoint of saying, hey, we don't want the local community, we don't want a patchwork of different laws here. We want this to be one uniform law for the state of Florida. Would that be the rationale for that? Or is it just something completely different?
That's a really good question. And that's actually something that Ryan and I set out to answer when we wrote that story. They're like, okay, we're hearing a lot of complaints, right? Planning groups, communities, they're all really upset about this, but there's got to be a good reason that the legislators originally wrote this law. So we talked to both. I talked to one, he talked to the other, the sponsor in the House and the Senate, and both of them told us they had no idea. No one had ever mentioned to them that there was any unintended consequences. There could be any unintended consequences with this change, but they both talked about overregulation. They both specifically mentioned that sometimes they were worried that after a storm, communities might say, well, they brought up all the hypotheticals, right? Like after a storm, a community may say, hey, pause on building in this storm hit area. Let's just not do any new development there for a year or two and see where things land. They were really worried about that being an issue. But I mean, Ryan can tell you, we never really found a specific example of something that they were upset about that they were trying to block. It was more like a hypothetical. It's kind of what we kept hearing from them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Alex, right. I mean, I guess my question would be that, you know, when communities get hit by a storm, and we use it all the time when we got hit by Irene and Sandy in New Jersey, you learn lessons and you mold new, you know, laws, you mold new building codes from those lessons that these storms teach you. This bill is recently enacted in Florida now kind of prevents that, right? So you could have a community hit hard. You want to implement these changes based on what happened in the storm. And this bill kind of prevents communities from doing that for up to 2 years after a hurricane hit. That's correct. And then Florida gets hit by so many hurricanes that you may actually have a moratorium for, you know, you get hit by one storm and 2 years later you get by another storm. So it could literally be years to maybe a decade before any laws on a local basis can change. Is that correct?
That's exactly the nightmare scenario that we heard over and over and over again from local governments. There is, I think Palma brought this up earlier, it's a good point. Florida has really great building codes after a storm, and they get updated every 3 years. So this is a different screw you can use to hold your roof in better, or this type of impact window is better than the other ones, and you should use this one. Those kind of changes will still happen. This bill doesn't appear like it's going to block any of those changes, which already kind of roll out on a regular basis. But when it comes to the hyper local stuff, like, oh, we found out that this community floods really badly, and we'd like, you know, in the future when you build new homes, this neighborhood we got to be 1 foot up, or you have to have a more green space or something to soak up the water. Those kind of like, okay, this is a local community thing, not a statewide thing that only we would know because only our community experienced this storm. Those are the kind of changes that we're seeing critics really nervous about. And knock on wood, we haven't had a hurricane this year. And we're still expecting from NOAA a pretty active season in the next couple of months, but we could really see this get put to the test in the next couple of months. And I think Manatee County explicitly has been sort of leading the charge about it. And Ryan will tell you they're having a meeting next week to kind of say, we hate this bill and we want it to change.
Yeah, and to that point, they basically decided, hey, this bill is really bad, and if we don't stand up to it, who's going to? So they've decided that they're going to vote for a few changes, basically in defiance of this bill. On Thursday, they're holding a special meeting, and it's 2 things. They're going to vote to put back their wetland protections, which developers have tried to stop them from doing, citing this new law, and also put back their rural development area boundary, which was that boundary I was talking about earlier, because they feel like their infrastructure needs to catch up with all this new building after they had really severe flooding in last year's hurricanes. So.
Isn't
Now,
there?
do you feel that, oh, I'm sorry, Dan.
Oh, go ahead, Palma. Sorry.
Do you feel that after your conversations with the legislators that they may be open to making these changes now that they are maybe aware of these issues that they weren't made aware of prior to putting this law into effect?
At the time we talked to them, they said they would be open to potential changes if they see, you know, problems with the law and practice. So we'll see whether that comes to pass or not. And we actually, Manatee and Pasco County and several other counties in Florida are joining together to basically request that the legislature take a look at how this law is playing out in practice and, you know, put a finer point on what they meant when they wrote more burdensome or more restrictive. So
I will also add that as part of the reporting for the story, Ryan and I talked to multiple lobbyists who showed us in emails and conversations that they did warn both of these lawmakers explicitly that this was going to be the outcome of it. So it seems to us like the lawmakers didn't really believe that, or thought maybe, you know, crying wolf, unclear, but they did tell both of us, yeah, they'd be open to making changes. But Florida only has legislative session once a year. So the next opportunity would be February of next year to make any changes.
Got it. So you made me, I had a question and then you made me think of one thing. So I'll kind of ask two questions here. How likely is it that maybe these, you know, people in the state house, the representatives that you spoke of, was there a lobbying effort on the part of developers to put this in there? And then my question I was going to ask is, what's the perspective of the Florida Office of Emergency Management on this?
The emergency management, I can start with that one, is a great question. We have asked them and they haven't really responded. We're still waiting to see what they think about this change. I know behind closed doors, they've said, you know, we will, if it's actually going to be a problem, we'll stop it. The emergency management was really, really supportive of a lot of other things in this bill. Like I said, all the good stuff that local governments were excited about, you know, red tape, better funding, streamlined processes. The Department of Emergency Management was like super behind them every step of the way for that bill. They haven't explicitly said, or even privately, as far as we're aware, said anything about this aspect of the bill. And then developer-wise, yeah, we got some public records that are really interesting. So keep an eye out for a story on who may have actually influenced this bill. But what is really clear is some of the developer-led organizations in Florida openly talked about their lobbying efforts being successful here. The Florida Home Builders Association and some other groups publicly posted statements saying that they considered this a win, that the burdensome and restrictive language was included in there. And they see this as a win for the ability to continue to develop affordable housing in Florida, which is a huge, huge unmet need in the state. And so they see it as a way to continue building cheap, affordable workforce housing.
Yeah, and I would add to that note on the developers that we have had developer groups, developer attorneys showing up to our commission meetings and basically, you know, threatening the commission, if you go through with some of these changes that we don't like, you're going to be seeing legal action from us. So it has definitely set up a conflict with the development community.
Got it. I'll ask one more. What does this mean for flood insurance in the state? I know it's super early. We haven't had a hurricane yet, but is there projections that either your reporting has shown or even just what your gut has told you about this?
So funny you bring that up, because that was actually an instant change of this bill. Is it removed a wonky little provision in Florida's flood insurance that for instance, if you're familiar, if your audience is familiar with the community rating system, there's a lot of things communities can do to get their flood insurance, to get discounts for everyone in the community. And one of the options, one of the tools in the toolbox for communities in Florida was to make it easier to lower the thresholds necessary to force someone to elevate their home after a storm. A certain amount of damage, the damage threshold basically was lower. So more people were elevating their homes thanks to this change, and this bill eliminated that. So it will now, we will see for sure that fewer people will be forced to elevate their homes after a storm because of the change in this bill, and because they're losing that thing that you could check off the box to all add up together all your points and get that discount. A bunch of communities actually saw an immediate increase in their flood insurance. They lost some of their discounts. Instead of having a 25% discount, they went to a 20% discount, 15% go to a 10. And a couple communities lost even the only 5% discount they had, because this was such a load-bearing weight in their total calculation of how many points. So it was an instant change, and a lot of people saw their, including me in my community, I saw my flood insurance go up. It wasn't tremendously expensive. It was a couple $100 this year, which is not a couple hundred I was interested in spending. But in terms of flood insurance in Florida, it's not the end of the world. But it is a change that flood insurance people and mitigation specialists were nervous about, because anything that makes flood insurance more expensive in a state where more people need to have it is kind of a bad thing.
And, you know, we should say, as part of the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, our goal is keeping people safe and making sure to increase that CRS score for all of our member communities. And just by joining the New Jersey Coastal Coalition for free, you're pretty much going to get a one-class increase just by being part of the Coastal Coalition. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching Tidal Flooding Talk. We are brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, and we would like to remind our viewers to build responsibly. A well-planned build can save you money and protect your home. Building just 1 foot above the minimum elevation requirement can lower insurance costs and reduce flood damage. Don't forget to elevate your mechanical equipment like air conditioners and generators. Small changes can make a big difference.
Ryan and Alex, I have a two-part question for you. Voters are reacting to the instant flood insurance premium rises that you mentioned. All right, the CRS points, going away with this bill. Our lawmakers react to voters reacting, and you say that you can't react on this bill until February. But is that instant uptick in flood insurance premiums, or the harder availability of getting it, is that having any immediate impact, or is there a buzz with politicians saying, "Oh, this may be a problem we have to visit in February"? And then the second part of the question is longer term. If I know, Alex, on our last podcast, on our last show, we talked about how homeowners insurance is difficult to get. Do you think that the lower the building codes and more homes that can be repeatedly damaged by storms, longer term, is this going to snowball that problem in a slippery slope and make homeowners insurance even harder to get because you're not building back better?
That is the trillion-dollar question: is how much can you bend before you break in the real estate market in Florida? And the answer right now is you can bend pretty hard. I will say that the effects to flood insurance will affect 44 different communities, but only 12 of them immediately saw costs jump, and they're not tremendously high costs. So I have done some reporting on this, but even in those communities, it's more like individual homeowner grumbles. It's less of a concentrated swell of pushback. Not to say that couldn't happen, but we're talking an average of $40 per year is what most of those homeowners will probably see as an increase starting in July, which feels like it blends right in with the average 15% or higher increases most people see every single year from all of their insurance. So it doesn't seem like this has necessarily a big enough ripple effect yet. However, what we hear from experts in floodplain mitigation, experts in better rebuilding after hurricanes, is they're concerned that this is just one of those dominoes, right? Like you said, if you see these changes happening and insurance just gets a little bit more expensive, but it gets a little bit more expensive every year, and your homes are now more eligible for flooding because you didn't actually build them back stronger. You built them back exactly the way they were when they got hit the first time. That is eventually, experts say, going to have an effect. People aren't going to want to buy houses that flood. Although, like we talked about last time, and we found in my reporting, serious floods of trouble, that's not happening yet in Florida. People are still happily lining up to buy flooded homes at nearly full value. And most economists don't see that slowing down anytime soon unless insurance really goes off a cliff. But yeah, we haven't seen it yet. We might see it in the future. And when whoever can predict when we're going to see it will be the richest person in Florida, which is definitely saying something.
Yep.
Got it. With your reporting in general, what do you want to do with your next story or stories? I mean, I'm assuming this is something you're going to do a follow-up on maybe in the weeks after a hurricane hits Florida, but is there anything in the immediate term that you're looking at?
Yeah, Ryan and I were actually just talking about this today, and I'm glad the timeliness of you guys asking us to be on this podcast, because we have some follow-up reporting planned on that very testy, I would imagine, meeting that we're going to see in Manatee County in just a few days. And as well as this letter writing campaign and this push. Some of these lawsuits, we're really curious about what they're going to look like. We got a pretty good public records trove to dig through, showing of who might be behind slipping in this single little small sentence into otherwise a very unanimously pushed forward bill. So we have lots to see. We have to see, I think in Florida, one of the stories you're always chasing, and Ryan can back me up on this, is who has the power. and are the choices that they're using, and what are they using that power for? Are they pushing it forward for the good of society? Like, are we building better homes that more people can afford to live in, or are we choosing profits in a short-term situation? And I think that's just an open question and an open story we're always chasing, and this is a part of it.
Now, do you think that there is a middle ground here, or is it remove that sentence or keep?
It's a good question. Hey, Ryan, you want to go more into that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's exactly what a lot of the counties would like to see is a middle ground where they're saying, we're willing to have some new restrictions on, what kind of laws we can pass right after a hurricane, but it can't affect all of our local planning and take away all of our power to shape the future of our cities and counties. So.
All right. Dan, any final questions? Otherwise, we're going to get to our one thing we can't stop talking about.
No, I think we can spring right into that.
Excellent. All right, so let's get into it. The one thing we can't stop talking about, tidal flooding or otherwise. How about Dan? I'll pitch it off to you for number one.
Well, as this this is released, we have hurricane activity off the East Coast. So I think we start talking about the tropics. We hope we make it through the season okay with just surf and rip currents, and that's it, and no hurricanes hitting land. So just hoping for a fish season, hurricane storm wise.
Got it. Yes, all of us, I think, everyone on this call would agree with the same thing, right? Fingers crossed. Palma, how about you?
I'm just enjoying the last few weeks of summer, I think, and hoping for some, mild to non-coastal flooding this fall. And by the way, follow up from a few episodes ago, I did finally move from my 2-year-old daughter from her toddler bed to a twin-size bed, which has been a world of a difference for me when I'm called in there to sleep in there for an hour. So
I see the energy just from sleeping so much already, just through Zoom here. All right, I'm gonna go. This is not the most positive one, but I am hooked on this AI 2027 piece that came out like 2 weeks ago. These AI researchers, Alex, you're shaking, you know what I'm talking about, this one? Yeah, I was hooked last night, staying up way later than I should have, reading about AI and how it's either going to kill all humans in about 6 years, or it's going to save humanity and we're all going to live in a utopian society. And it's with some serious people too. So I'm hoping that, these are projections that are just projections. But it looks like it's coming to us in the next 2 or 3 years, if you were to believe this. So that's my story. Maybe it'll help build, we can move the hurricanes with AI, at some point.
Nice.
I'll definitely have to read that because I'm terrified of AI and what it has in store for us. So
don't read it before you go to bed, because I actually had a little nightmare from it last night. I realized. Anyway, good. Alex, we'll go with you.
I also have a bummer. The 70-year-old beautiful gigantic tree in my backyard that's 70 feet tall has some sort of awful tree disease, and we have to cut it down. So I am planning, not this weekend, but next weekend, I'm holding a funeral for my tree, and my friends are going to come. We're going to dress in all black. We're going to say goodbye to my tree, which I'm excited to do, but sad. Also, I'm glad Aaron's going to miss us, because otherwise that would be a problem.
That would be a problem. Like they say, plants have feelings too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ryan, you're last.
I would say I have sharks on the brain because I've been writing about them this week.
Oh, okay.
This year happens to be the 50th anniversary of Jaws, but that's not why. There's actually this controversy going on right now where a lot of fishermen, anglers in Florida are seeing sharks like steal their catches, and scientists are trying to figure out what's going on. And sharks get a bad rap, and they play a very important part in the ecosystem. So there's kind of this back and forth between like people are like, get rid of these nuisance sharks, and then
Okay, so we'll be on the lookout for it.
We have a story. Yeah.
When do we think it's coming out?
It's out now.
Oh, it's out now. Okay, well, check it out, Bradenton Herald. You can see all about sharks there. All right, well, we are out of time for this week's episode of Tidal Flooding Talk. We want to thank Ryan and Alex for coming on the show. Thanks for coming on again, Alex. We'll be back with you next Tuesday with a new episode. You can catch little reels and clips throughout the week on our social media channels, and we'll talk to you then. Take care, everybody.